Hello, everyone, and welcome to Afternoon Tea. My name is Brittany. I hope you guys are all having a super fantastic and amazing Friday. And there is so much to discuss. Obviously, I sort of put it in the thumbnail, and we will definitely be discussing Maureen Callahan's interview with Christopher Anderson. I bought his book unironically because I go to Barnes and Noble, and every time I find a new royal book, usually I get it. I have some thoughts. Just even in the first chapter that I read, listening to the interview, obviously I need to learn a bit more about the exact circumstances of some of his conclusions. Like they had to bring in an entire Italian doctor team to treat Catherine and to do her surgery. And I am so sorry, but I call 1,000% BS on that story. I don't think that's true at all. I think there's a lot of in there that he's written so far that I've seen just in chapter 1 that I don't think is true. And it goes back to something that I've really started to notice with quote unquote royal journalism and royal commentating, which is people like Rob Shooter also falls under this umbrella who don't really know what they're talking about, who I think are just even simply making things up and claiming to have sources when the source is really themselves or a not a good source. And I've always been clear on how I will do things, and I will reiterate how I do things. And like nothing, it's just very frustrating to see so much misinformation, people believing it being perpetuated, published, and other people with larger platforms highlighting information that just obviously just doesn't make any sense. Sometimes it just comes back to logic. When you think about something logically, it's like that doesn't make sense. And I feel like so much of that falls into it. And I think it needs to be discussed. And I don't like calling out, let's say, necessarily other creators, but I do think this is a case of because goes far beyond just even Maureen and Rob Shooter and Christopher Anderson. But it's just become, especially with Harry and Meghan, there is so much now, I think, interest in jumping on this bandwagon and people who just don't even really understand how royals work talking about things that they just don't even understand. And they can't ask good questions and they can't challenge people when they're interviewing them because they don't know enough to like immediately, like I do, see the logical fallacies. So anyways, guys, we'll get into that. We also have Harry's African Park situation once again coming under fire. We'll talk a little bit about Meghan Markle and her latest matches debacle. Oh, that poor brand it's not going to survive. It's not going to survive. So, guys, we're going to get into all of this today, and I keep desperately searching on my desk for my little remote for my light here. Oh, I found it. So guys, let me know what color. We got yellow because I have something very special in yellow that hopefully I'll get a video up on later. But we can do blue, we can do pink, whatever. I have so many different colors here to choose from. And I'm also trying to get through my research for Edward VIII, getting through this book from Francis Donaldson, who is considered like one of the best biographies on Edward VIII, which I got unironically. Again, just because I pick up royal books. I have so many royal books at this point. It's kind of insane. But let's go ahead and get into this whole Maureen Callahan situation because I think this is incredibly important. And I will just preface this by what I do. You guys will notice I never claim to have sources because I don't really have any sources. I go to events, I cover events. Sometimes I do interact with royal officials and I try to be as polite as possible. I don't really push. I'm not a pushy person. Generally, I'm not a competitive person. So I'm not the one trying, let's say, automatically to dig up the dirt. And even there was an instance where Frederick and Mary arrived in this really cool, like old Rolls Royce for an event. And I just asked them, hey, there was a couple guys around. And I was like, hey, can I just take a picture of the car? And they're like, for personal use? And I was like, if that's all I can get, yes, I can show my dad and my nephew this car, but you guys aren't going to see that picture because I really want to be like as respectful as humanly possible. And I hope this is always my hope. And again, I'm not a pushy person. I'm not a competitive person. And so in some ways I probably miss out. But my hope is that by being truthful and honest and slowly building up a strong reputation of being, let's say, truthful, going with fact, and not, let's say, overly embellishing things and these sorts of things that eventually, by organically at some point, I will end up with some sources. That is what I'm hoping. That organically, if you run a ethical operation, you will end up with sources. There has been one time where I said I had a source who said Harry was seen at LAX, and that source said that to me. I know who that person is, not going to share. And it was late, and I was the first person to post about it, and it was later verified by The Sun that Harry had gone to the UK. Matt Wilkinson asked me a bit about it because he was writing the article. I gave him a little bit, but I find some aspects of journalism always just a little bit sleazy because sometimes it has to break ethical, like what I would consider ethical and moral boundaries. And when it comes to Catherine in particular and her cancer situation, I also want to be above board about what I've always said. So, in the beginning, when the announcement was first made that she needed surgery, I said, well, given that she needs to stay in the hospital 2 weeks and is going to be recovering for 6 to 8 more weeks, I would naturally assume that it was major abdominal surgery. There were a lot of people who didn't like that, thought I was over speculating that I was wrong or something like that. But I just said that in relation to the fact that I've had multiple surgeries. And because of those surgeries, I knew that the time I spent in the hospital was very short, even with, fairly major, a couple hour long surgeries. And given the risk of infection, the risk of people finding out more about what Catherine is doing, the risk of people getting into her room or something like that, that it would make infinitely more sense to have the surgery and then get her home as soon as possible. If it takes a full 2 weeks to get her home, and in fact it did, then my supposition was that it must be major abdominal surgery. You can kind of take it beyond that, but that was my conclusion. Some people were like, "Oh, don't speculate on that. That's not true, whatever." And then Catherine actually did confirm that in her cancer confirmation video. And I've said that because of her surgery, likely she's had to change aspects of her life, what she can eat. If she's had major abdominal surgery, most likely it involved something related to the abdominal cavity. So we know it's not related to her female reproductive syndrome, female reproductive system. So, like, it obviously encompasses other things, but beyond that, and beyond knowing myself what surgery it means and impacts in terms of your life, like having again 2 surgeries to fix broken bones. My bones are not the same. I deal with stuff every day related to it, like at least maybe a little bit of pain. Actually, I have additional bone growing out of my foot now. So, because of that, like, I understand that surgery, no matter what it is, most likely impacts your day-to-day life in a way that you didn't totally anticipate. So, that's always been sort of my supposition and my level. And that's why when Catherine said, "Oh, I'm not drinking alcohol anymore," I was like, "Okay, that's probably related to whatever the abdominal surgery was." And then we also had, let's say, her changing of shoes, her reliance now on her Ralph Lauren. I was like, "Oh, that must maybe mean some change to her." But again, not speculating beyond that. I just found it interesting because obviously your life changes in some ways. But what we get here from Christopher and what we see in the Marie Callahan interview is beyond that. Like, he's saying that she had sharp abdominal pains. And I was like, how do you know that? That's never been reported anywhere else. And I mean, I've said on X and I've kind of hypothesized that actually Catherine not going to Earthshot Prize in 2023 was actually one of our first indicators that she was struggling maybe with some health issues. And that I would imagine this is something she's been dealing with for a while. And they finally got to the point of, okay, we need to have surgery. And so that's kind of where that's kind of a thought I've had. And I think that's okay to have. And it's like, all right. I try not to do more beyond that. I don't need to know what cancer she has. I don't need to know how many doctors were in the room, who the surgeons were, anything like that. I don't need to know that. And I don't think anybody else needs to know either. I think we've had perfectly enough information to, let's say, hang our hats on because royals do They do. Like, they should have the right to an element of privacy. I don't need to know the details of her medical treatments. Like, nobody needs to know that. And to go beyond that, I think is a bit sleazy. I hate to say it, but I think it's a bit sleazy because it's not within our benefit to know, and it's not required to know. So it's like, if Donald Trump, let's say, just taking a totally different example, let's say Donald Trump had a fairly major surgery in relation to something with, let's say, his brain. That's not happening. I'm just speculating. If that is happening, I think we as the public deserve to know that, because if he is having something in relation to his brain or whatever, and we end up with, let's say, a different president coming out of surgery, I think we have the right to know that. But if he has, let's say, a prostate issue or something like that, I don't really need to know. I don't think you need to know either. Like, some things are just simple and routine. Catherine's surgery was major. I'm sure there was a lead up to that. And she needed a long time to recover. And here's the other thing, her recovery time was explained fully in the initial announcement that she would not be back until after Easter. And yet somehow this is a magical mystery to people. And somehow we needed to speculate endlessly, even though she told us and the palace told us she wouldn't be back until Easter. Like, the amount of speculation, like, I feel like the palace maybe should have done a better job hammering home. It's like, we told you after Easter. Is it after Easter yet? If the answer is no, she's still recovering. This is not rocket science. But apparently it's rocket science. And again, we'll go over the interview because I think that's really, really important to go over kind of the details of that. But I will say, like, they get some details wrong here in the timeline and what they're saying. They're like, there's things that are just simply wrong. And the palace didn't lie to us about certain things. I don't think, and I'll go into it, but I think there's some things even the palace didn't know. And so, guys, again, we're gonna get all into this because I have thoughts. And so hopefully this will be good, because I think, again, there's so much misinformation out there anymore, and so many people going down the royal beat who don't follow royals. Guys, I've followed royals. I've been to royal events. I'm actually one of the few people who commentates on royals who consistently actually tries to go to royal events. I've seen over 80 royals in person now. I've covered events in Sweden, in the UK, in Denmark, in the Netherlands. Hopefully, I'm going to be covering an event in Belgium. Hopefully, we're going to cover the Marius case in Norway. Like, I go out and I see and I hear and I interact a lot more than other commentators do. And I've been watching things for like 15 years now, pretty closely. And so I feel like I have a pretty good baseline for what makes sense. Do I know everything? No. But I have a pretty good baseline. And so let's go ahead and get into this. And yeah, again, I think this is all complete BS. And I think a lot of what Christopher Anderson is saying is wrong. And sometimes when people have written a consistent amount of books, like, they just give them books, I don't think he actually ever did his research. This video also got pretty well ratioed. So let's see. Yeah, 1,500 dislikes to 500 likes. And I honestly don't think Maureen came out of this well. And there's been a couple things I've seen that are a little concerning that she's done before. But let's go ahead and get into this, because I think, again, it's important to, I know not everybody likes it, even when I do it in regard to Meghan Markle, but I think it's important to actually hear what people have said, because I think that's really important. Let's see here. Okay. And then we stop every 10 to 15 seconds for copyright reasons. And that's just done for that reason. So let's get into it.
Book, which is incredible. When Catherine had her abdominal surgery. Now, please let us know if this was the initial surgery that discovered the cancer, or whether this was after.
So this is, like, she's had one abdominal surgery. I don't know why she's saying initial. She had one. So that's number one, not correct. Now, granted, did she probably have to go under anesthesia to get her port put in? Yes, but that is a different procedure. And they're asking a little bit, but my understanding, and guys, there's somebody in my family who's been battling cancer for 10 years. So I'm fairly familiar. They're more familiar. And I did talk to them a lot about this around the time of Catherine's cancer diagnosis or whatever. But like, if they're removing something, if they're examining tissue, they do test it, and that's fairly common. Even if they're pretty sure there's not cancer, if there's even a hint that that's what that could be, they do test it to examine. But I think they went into this surgery thinking whatever the situation was fairly benign. I don't think there was a follow-up surgery. If there was, it was something related to what they did in the initial surgery, and it was done in hospital before she left. And again, we don't need to know that. If that was the case, I don't care. And when I say I don't care, I mean because I don't really need to know. And it doesn't impact the overall picture. There's sometimes where you need to know some details, but this doesn't really interact and impact the whole picture. So let's keep going.
The cancer was discovered. Her surgeon was the same surgeon who operated on Pope Francis. Is that right?
So that I found so weird. Why Pope Francis? And then again, I probably need to read this section of the book, but I've been having lunch and stuff, and so I didn't get a chance to read it yet. But it's like, why did you need that particular surgeon? Is there not a surgeon in the UK who could do this surgery? Like, as far as I'm aware, they have never bussed surgeons in to the UK from the Vatican, basically, to perform surgery on a royal. That's so weird. Now, if a royal went to the United States to have surgery, I could understand that because the United States is sort of well known for having some of the best care in the world. Yes, it's kind of hit and miss, and yes, it's a little weird with our insurance system, but the United States, especially for acute care and these sorts of things, is known for being among the best in the world. And so if a royal came to the United States for something, that is a possibility. But like, why would they need to bus in special surgeons from the Vatican? Basically, it's like, that's just weird. It doesn't meet the smell test. I'm sorry, it just doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, as a team of surgeons were flown in secretly for that first, you're absolutely right, the first abdominal surgery, which she thought she was getting for a benign condition. And
so like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you need these guys? I just don't understand. I'm sorry. I think he's either making it up or he's getting BS information, and people aren't good enough. And I think people want the angle so much that they're willing to hang their hat on bad information to grab a headline. Because this just sounds fanciful. They flew them in secretly. And it's like, what? Like, why are we doing cloak and dagger? Like, as soon as people start getting into cloak and dagger territory, that's where I'm usually like, oh, no.
And, Pope Francis had his, the same surgeons who'd operated on him for abdominal problems that he had, were flown secretly in and operated on her at the London Clinic, which is a very famous hospital in the middle of London.
So, was it the London Clinic? Yeah. Okay. So I still just don't understand. So that is technically correct, but it's yeah. And why not like push back from Maureen's standpoint? Like, maybe she hasn't read the book, but I would need to know the fuller context. But I'm like, why in the world would this be necessary? It just seems very extreme. And again, you're talking about a private hospital. Obviously, you have the NHS. You do have the private hospital system as well, though, in the UK. They're some of the best. Like, why couldn't they handle it? And there is a situation, like, for example, in cases regarding, let's say, a child. There was a child I remember in the UK. Again, the circumstances do elude me a little bit, like the exact circumstances. But the child was considered by the UK authorities and doctors to be brain dead, and that they needed the parents to unhook the child from life support systems. But because of the pro-life stance of the Catholic Church was like, hey, if you fly your child down here, we will continue care for your child indefinitely. And the UK government told him, no, you can't do that. Even if they wanted to take him, like they said, you can't do that. You have to pull the plug. So in that situation, that I understand. But beyond that, I just cannot fathom why an entirely different doctor team, unrelated, and they wouldn't want that anyways. Like they wouldn't want that. The royal family is known for using like a select number of doctors, and if they need to go outside, those doctors are vetted, and there's like, I'm sure, all sorts of checks and balances. And so what? It's just, yeah, it's just bizarre.
So you say she thought she was getting treatment for a benign
Yes.
issue, which would seems to indicate they discovered a mass and they
Right.
thought it was benign.
Right.
So this is, I mean, we don't know if it was a mass. Obviously, they probably removed something. That's why they need to test it. Anytime they remove something, they test something to see what it is. But I would imagine this had more to do with, I would imagine this had been going on for a little bit until it got to this point. But maybe I'm totally wrong. But anyways, that they just keep using the word benign is just a little odd. It's always concerning if you do have something that you need to look at. But of course, they try to do the best they can initially to review and see what it was.
And it's interesting that the palace is very cagey about all this. First of all, of course, we still don't know what cancer it was, nor do we know what the king's cancer is.
You don't really need to know. Why is it your business to know? Now, in the king, I have a little bit of a different perspective on, because he is the king. And the closer you are, again, to the seat of power, I think sometimes the more transparency you need to have. But I think the disadvantage for the king is that if it is a particular cancer that does not have a cure, and that he is probably going to pass away from it, like they don't want to announce that and for everybody to be like looking at their clock waiting for him to go or something. Like that's ridiculous. And so I understand. And Catherine especially, there's no reason anybody needs to know. She is not the future head of state. She is just a mom with kids. Yes, she works, up for the monarchy, but there's no reason why you need to know that level of information about what type of cancer that is. That's unnecessary information. And the palace is not being cagey. You do have an element of privacy. I'm sure all the royals have dealt with medical conditions that we don't know about. That's fine. Like, that's fine. I'm sure all the women get mammograms. They get pap smears. Do I need to know the results? No. I mean, we have had a couple of royals. So Queen Sonia of Norway recently went to the hospital because of a heart condition, heart failure, these sorts of things. They did share that. Do we need to know all the details of that? No. Queen Margrethe of Denmark, she's had health issues. She just went home today. They found a blood clot in her hip. They let us know that. And that's it. I don't need to know what type of treatment they gave her. I just hope she's recovering at home and having a wonderful time at Friendsborg. Like, I don't need to know that. Yes, you need to have an element of, if somebody's in the hospital, it's good to know that. But beyond that, I just don't think any of us, I don't need to know every time Louis scrapes his knee. Like, that's ridiculous. And I feel like that's the level they're asking for here.
But they kept saying that there was a preventative chemo that she was having for cancer. Well, no, she was diagnosed with cancer. Once the cancer cells are there, that was what it was for. So
I imagine that's somewhat true, but again, either way, I just don't think we need to be overly speculating on that, really.
That she had was just grueling, like it is for everyone usually, and she underwent it in this kind of cloak and dagger way that I describe in the book, where she's being driven, in the back of her assistant's car.
So I thought that was interesting. I read the beginning part of the book, and he claims that Natasha Archer is the one who drove Catherine out of Royal Marsden as King Charles was leaving. They left at the same time. I don't know if I totally buy that, because again, I'm thinking abdominal surgery and how sensitive your abdominal, like once you mess with the abdominal muscles, like, if you've had a C-section or something like that, like it's hard to move particular ways. So I doubt they are cramming her in the back of the SUV trying to get her out. Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. I imagine, of course, there was an element of cloak and dagger, which makes sense to get her out of there. But I don't think she was in Natasha Archer's car. I think Natasha was part of the diversion tactic, but I don't think that by any stretch of the imagination, Catherine was in the back of Natasha's car. Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. I imagine there was some sort of, I mean, they could have even pulled her out, let's say, in an ambulance, like an ambulance came in bringing in somebody else and Catherine came out in the ambulance or something like that. Like, that makes sense to me. But with the assistant, no, not so much, especially post-surgery.
Her down, goes in a side entrance of the Royal Marsden Hospital. For 2 months, nobody knows she's getting cancer treatment because she wanted to wait to tell the kids during spring break.
I don't think that's true either. I think the whole idea that they waited 2 months to tell the kids is a little ridiculous. And you have to think of the timing too. So she announced about mid-March. She had to recover from her abdominal surgery first. They're not just going to automatically give her chemo immediately. And she was in the very early stages when she had made that video. So number one, what he's saying, I think, is wrong. I don't think as soon as the surgery was over and they found cancer, they immediately strapped her into chemo treatments. That would be insane. She would need to physically recover from the abdominal surgery first, which, imagine again, think if you've had a C-section, the abdominal muscles, like that impacts so much of how you sit, how you stand, how you move. And so in just that respect, you would need to get that area somewhat, let's say, under control. And I think, let me see when the service of Thanksgiving for King. So the service of Thanksgiving for King Constantine of Greece was February 27th. And I believe it has been reported by respectable journalists that was around the time of Catherine's first cancer treatment, which is why William missed it. Because there was a big fuss about him missing that. So that's what we've been told. That makes more sense. And again, I don't feel like that's overly speculating. I'm just looking at the facts and making some like natural logical conclusions, which again, he's very much, I think, fabricating perhaps to sell a book. That's just my thought and opinion there.
Children, break it to them at home. So then there was this firestorm of conspiracy theories. It was
right. Before we get to that, Christopher, I want to go back to the very beginning of this story, which
So, and the conspiracy theories, again, were ridiculous. They told us she would be out until after Easter, which was the end of March. So I don't know why there was all these conspiracies, and it still drives me nuts to this day. I think the palace should have just been kept going on and going. She's not going to be back until after Easter, people. Like, this is not. People are so ignorant. It's so like, once they told that to me, I was like, oh, okay, whatever. Whenever we see her, it'll be after Easter. That's great. Like, I didn't need to see her before that. And I don't know why other people felt the need to.
Just find fascinating because this was a rare misstep by the palace in every way. The handling of Kate's illness. A team of surgeons, you say, were flown in to operate on the Princess of Wales.
So again, she should have pushed back on that and gone, okay, I mean, I get it. That's a fantastical story, but explain to me exactly how this happened, why they needed these particular surgeons. That's again, my big question is why you needed these particular surgeons, what were wrong with the UK surgeons, like these sorts of things. And you have to think there's a big difference between a man in his, what was he, in his 80s? Pope Francis, there's a big difference between a man in his 80s and a woman in her 40s in terms of their health. So like, those are not equal things, And so it's like, why would you need the same surgeons from post? Like, to me, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, make it make sense. Make it make sense. Like, be logical. I can go down tracks when they're logical. This is just not logical.
Right. From how many countries? How many surgeons were there?
What? Why do you need? How many countries? How many surgeons were there? Why do you need to know? What right do you have to know that? Like, that's insane. That's insane. You don't need to know that. And that is not, let's say, appropriate journalism questions. And these are the aspects, like some people are like, well, she's just like an investigative reporter. I was like, I don't feel like this again goes back to the struggle I have with some aspects of journalism where it's like they're willing to violate things that I don't think, and lines that shouldn't be crossed because they're chasing a story. It reminds me of, so if you watch the Netflix documentary on the Night Stalker, they had one piece of evidence that was like connected to every crime, and that was a shoe print. And it was a very particular pair of shoes, a very particular size. And so the cops didn't want to share that because they didn't want him to change his shoes. And some journalists got a hold of that and they wanted to go with it. And it's like, no, wait. Like, that's one of the few things the cops have. If he gets rid of those shoes, if he changes that MO, that aspect of his crime, you're kind of screwing the cops, and you might lead to the deaths of more people. Like, there are just some things you should just keep to yourself. That's my perspective on journalism. There's just some things you don't need to know, or there's some things where even if you learn it, it's not appropriate to share it. And not everybody agrees with that, but that's my perspective for what it's worth.
Was from the Vatican. These were the surgeons who were.
Are these private surgeons at the Vatican?
No, they're attached to Gemelli. They're technically with the Gemelli Clinic, which is a famous cancer clinic in.
So the condition is benign, but they needed these famous cancer doctors. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. Like, yeah. No. If you're pretty sure it's not cancer and you're doing this surgery, you don't need specialty cancer doctors. That's a little bit overkill. But it is what it is. But yeah, I feel like we need so many more follow-up questions that we're not getting.
In Rome, but they are assigned specifically to the Pope.
Do we know how many surgeons were in the operating theater?
Okay, I don't know why she cares about that question, but it's kind of funny because it's like, are we back in the Middle Ages when the UK was still like a Catholic country? Are we back in the Middle Ages, like pre-Henry VIII? Why the heck do these Vatican surgeons mean anything? My goodness.
When Catherine had her 3, and how long that surgery took?
Why do we need to know how long that surgery took? Like, no, you don't need to know that. You don't need to know that. It was major, so it probably lasted a little while, but is that any of our business? No. Like, and would that impact any understanding of anything? No, there's not. Let's say, because we know it was major, like you could surmise that it lasted a while, but like, again, like, why would I need to know? How does that impact my understanding of Catherine's health journey? It doesn't. It's unnecessary information.
I don't know, but it apparently it couldn't have been that long because it was thought to have, when she emerged, everyone thought that initially, that she looked pretty good.
Looking pretty good and actually being good are two different things. Any medical person could tell you that. Most people after major surgery, it is not their best day. Again, I can say that for personal experience. It's not your best day. You're like, you can't wear makeup. You there's a lot of things going on. It's just, so like they look at it and go, well, she looks good. Like, that's not medical at all. It's again, medicine is about, like, if you have something removed or if you need to test varying cells or whatever, that's something internal. And then you go and you send it to the lab and you go, well, she's recovering nicely. But yeah, it's just no.
It wasn't until lab tests came back that showed the presence of cancer.
Why, Christopher, did the palace? So the palace has denied your reporting. They're pushing back. They're saying that's not true.
So she might go into a little bit more detail, but because I can't remember if this is in regard to the cancer or not. But I did look back at my own Twitter just to look and see what the dates were. Because I remember, so Catherine's surgery was announced on January 17th. So that meant she had surgery on the 16th. And Rebecca English reported on January 17th. So again, the same day we were told about this surgery, that it was non-cancerous. So whatever the condition was, it was non-cancerous. And that's what we understood at the time. And I think that's what the palace understood at the time, because what I think as well is that the palace was somewhat kept in the dark about what was really going on with Catherine. I think because of the scariness of the diagnosis and these sorts of things and how they're evaluating and all this, that I don't even think really many of William and Catherine's staff knew immediately. I think it took a little bit of time. And that's part of, I think, the reason why the photo debacle.
Catherine was not operated on by the Pope's surgeon. I know what it's like to write a book and to have your reporting vetted and legaled, especially with a high profile person such as this.
So this was in particular regards to the Italian doctors. And so they're pushing back. She clarifies the Daily Mail has heard that they're pushing back, and she writes for the Daily Mail. And I think that's true. I think the palace is like, what the heck is this guy talking about? No. Like, it is just so dumb. And it's like she's basically treating his book as gospel just because it's published. There's a lot of crap that's published all the time. There's a lot of, even at the academic level, there's a lot of crap that's published that's just simply not true because it's driven by agenda and these sorts of things. And so to take this as true, if the palace is saying no, they're saying no for a particular reason. The palace pushes back when it needs to because the story is just completely BS. And it's in the first chapter of his book, basically. And so it's like, if it's in the first chapter of his book, like he can't be, like if he's caught out and being wrong, like the rest of the book is garbage, which I think it probably is. I'll try to get to reading it. That's my kind of goal in addition to doing all the Edward research. And then I want to do a video on Metamara and Marius. But where was I going with my thought process? But in regard to the quote unquote checks and balances, this is my thought here. I don't know if Christopher did have a lot of checks and balances when it came to this book because he's such an established author at this point and he sells fairly well. I don't think there was a lot of oversight. I don't think it was terribly vetted because they knew the palace doesn't really sue. And so they're not reviewing this. And so they're not giving it, they're not probably doing as much as you would. And it's a difference between the United States and the UK and how things are published. Defamation laws in the US are very different than the UK. It's much easier to sue for defamation in the UK than it is in the US. And so I just don't think there was actually a lot of vetting here. I just don't think there was. Because they know the palace is not going to kind of get really legal and bringing up like a lot of lawsuits over this. So I think the best thing to do is what I'm doing, which is going through and going, yeah, what this guy is spewing, I'm sorry, I think it's crap. It doesn't make any sense. But Maureen goes into something about the palace lying. And again, about Catherine's cancer, she goes into that as well. But again, I don't really think you can call it lying because I think at the time they said it, it was true. But things change, circumstances change, and that's okay.
I believe you. We should all believe you. Why would the palace lie about this?
Why should we believe him? Why? Why believe him? I don't understand. Why should we just believe him? Because he wrote a stinking book? Like, that's the only reason I, seem to think that she thinks we should believe him. Trust but verify has always been my standard. Trust but verify. And if something feels wrong, if something seems wrong, and sometimes it comes from having a lot of information that I've gleaned over the years, and if just something just hits me as wrong, usually it is wrong. Now, that's not 100% a good metric, but when you have a basis of strong information, you're able to evaluate that information based on the previous information you built up. I don't think she has that information. Maureen, I think she, casually watches Royals, not seriously watches Royals. And so I just think this is just utter and complete hogwash. And there's zero reason to believe him. Just because he actually got it on printed on paper doesn't mean what he's saying is true. And you can like some of the royal reporters, you can dislike some of the royal reporters, but those who with actual connections to the palace who are in the various events. Like Russell Meyer's book, I don't think it was particularly groundbreaking, but he wrote the book about William and Catherine. So it's like, I believe him. And was it probably a bit of a sanitized version? Sure, of course, because he does have the connections. But beyond that, it's like, no, there's just too much wrong here. Too much that doesn't make sense.
Well, the palace, their default position is to deflect, and if they say anything at all, usually they're silent about everything. But in this particular case, I don't know. I really don't know what the reason would be.
Why they're telling you you're wrong? Because you're wrong, and you look like you know you're wrong, and you're just wanting to sell a book. You're just wanting to sell a book, and like I feel it. He's not bringing up and explaining why any of this. It's like, and again, it's just like doesn't make. Like, I can't even fathom why you would need the Vatican surgeons there. Like, that's just crazy to me.
Because it's the surgeons have spoken about this, So
when have these surgeons spoken? They're not allowed to speak. It's called, in the United States, we call it HIPAA. There's something to the effect of medical privacy. If he's saying these guys have not spoken, even if it was true, they have not spoken because they're not allowed to speak. Like, this is basic stuff here. Like, yeah, and he's worried that the palace is going to poo-poo his book and he's not going to sell him. But honestly, he shouldn't sell, because even if you read the first chapter of his book, it kind of is, it's kind of weird because it's supposed to be about Kate, and yet it's not really about Catherine. It's not. We're talking about Charles. We're talking about Meghan. Oh, Meghan shed a tear when she heard about the news of Catherine. It's like, I doubt she did. I don't think she did at all. And I don't think she's thinking, oh, poor Charlotte, Louis, and George. No, Meghan's not thinking that. Like, I could go into the cynical things I think Meghan Markle was thinking, but we won't go there. But anyways, again, this is spouting just complete hogwash.
Yeah, I don't know why they would. As a matter of fact, I was not aware that they were denying it. To be honest with you, I hadn't heard that.
Oh, we've heard that. I've heard that over at the Daily Mail. Why do you think also, again, another misstep?
So again, we had to pause for various reasons, but again, the palace is denying it because it's just so what I'm like, because it's in print and it's in a book, it kind of rises to a level beyond just being in a news article. And Palace doesn't respond to everything, but they're kind of like, I don't know what this guy is spouting, but we just need to say no. And they're not even like really publicly doing it, but through sources from the Palace, through the Daily Mail, Palace is like, what is this dude talking about? I'm sure it's one of those things when it hit their desks, they're like, what? The Palace's PR team.
The palace was directly asked after Kate's abdominal surgery, and it was announced she would be retreating from public life. The rumors were rife. I mean, it was everything from she does have cancer to this is one I heard.
So as a reminder, just because it is in here, it's just very quickly. Based on current medical advice, she, and that is Catherine, is unlikely to return to public duties until after Easter. That was in the initial announcement regarding her surgery. Not until after Easter. So that the rumors were spreading is just because people are idiots. Like, I don't understand. People have surgery and they need a while to recover. There was a woman in my office. I think she had some sort of surgery related to a hysterectomy, and she had to be out for 6 weeks. I didn't go over to her and go, how long did your surgery take? I mean, sometimes I commiserate with people who've had surgery. It's more of like, hey, I was in surgery for 3 or 4 hours. How was yours? Like, in that type of way, but also because it was like a long invasive and she was out of the office. Like, we weren't going over and going, how long was your surgery? Can you show me your scar? Who did your surgery? How many surgeons were in the room? Like, number one, you probably really don't know as a patient how many doctors are in like people are in the room, by the way, you're knocked out. So you don't know anything. It's yeah. I don't know how many people were in my room for my first surgery on my foot or my wrist. I could maybe guess for the second surgery on my foot to remove the screws. So if like Catherine had a follow-up surgery, it might have been to like adjust something that had been done post-surgery, like maybe something related to drainage or something. And again, I don't need to know those details, but it's like I had that little follow-up surgery. I don't know who was in the room, although I was initially told, funny story. I was initially told that they would just do local, not general anesthesia. And that although the tissue would be numb, they couldn't really numb the bone. So initially, I thought I was going to have to sit there while they unscrewed screws from my foot. That's not what happened, but it's just, yeah. And I had the screws in the pin somewhere, or at least I did. Maybe through all the moves, I finally lost it. But anyways.
She's going into a mental hospital. She's having a breakdown.
Oh, absolutely.
She's leaving William. William's leaving her. All of
Right.
these rumors flying around. Why didn't the palace just say the Princess of Wales has been diagnosed with cancer? She is undergoing treatment.
Because they told you she wasn't going to be back until Easter, Maureen. Can you not read? This is so obvious. I'm sorry. This is just so obvious. So in the statement, she won't be back till Easter. She's having surgery on her abdomen. She's having surgery in her abdomen. Obviously, again, any woman who's had a C-section knows that it takes a while to recover from that. So you can imagine that and maybe times it by 4 or something. And that's maybe what Catherine experienced. And that, women who have C-sections, they can't even lift their baby for a while and these sorts of things. And so it's like, sometimes recovery takes a while. And maybe if people who haven't experienced that just don't understand that, but it's like, it takes a while. I had to do occupational therapy. I had to do physical therapy, these sorts of things to get myself back. And if you are speculating, that is a you problem. That is you not understanding basic English. That is you taking what should be a normal thing. And this, I do criticize the palace for not trying to control some of this a bit better, because they did sort of let this spin wildly out of control. And I just don't think they thought that people would overly speculate after they told them the information, but it's almost like they need to repeat it every week. She's had abdominal surgery. She's recovering. She won't be back until after Easter, and just repeat it ad nauseum for the crazy people in the back of the room. And as a reminder, some of this was reportedly done by Russian bots and people looking to destabilize aspects of the monarchy in the UK, because if the monarchy's lying, that looks bad and various things. But yeah, this was, I still don't understand why people are confused by things. I just still don't understand. It wasn't that hard, people. It wasn't that hard to understand. But if you thought she went into a mental institution, again, you weren't watching the royals that closely. If you think she was in a coma, you weren't watching the royals that closely.
We'll update you as needed.
Well,
and again, that's what the palace actually did. It was just other people who just were crazy. They were just crazy people. And what's weird is the mainstream media was not ignoring the crazy. They were participating in it, which is shame on them.
top of that, I totally agree with you. On top of that, I think it's a mistake for the king not to have come clean about what kind of he has. I mean,
why are we talking about King Charles? You're supposed to be writing a book on Catherine. And again, that was kind of my issue with his book at first, is like, he's not really talking about Catherine. And then talking about conversations the family is having and these sorts of things. It's like, you weren't there. How do you know? You don't know.
And to make the announcement, since he was getting having a procedure for prostate problems initially, again, he thought it was a benign problem in the beginning. But why?
And I still don't think Charles necessarily needs to know or needs the public to know, just because, again, I feel like people would be watching their watch, waiting for him to go downhill, and that's just not productive for him. And sometimes, you know what? People have the right. The royals sacrifice so much of their privacy and their lives for the public. It's like, let them have a little bit of privacy. He just doesn't want to share. That's okay.
why would the palace just issue a statement saying it's not prostate cancer? Because that then fueled this incredible.
They did say that. They did definitely say he did not have prostate cancer. They said that has been confirmed, because prostate cancer is very easy to treat, and that was like the one thing we were told it was not, was prostate cancer. That's specifically been well known for a long time, is that he doesn't have prostate cancer. So again, it's like you're supposed to be writing a book on it and you're not aware of like the basic facts. Come on now.
Speculation.
That it's prostate cancer. There's precedent. You lied before about Catherine's cancer. I mean, this is the.
They didn't lie about Catherine's cancer. They didn't know she had cancer. So here's my other theory, for what it's worth. I don't think Catherine and William really told any of their staff, particularly their royal staff. Probably their household staff knew, but I don't think any other royal staff, so the people who work in the office and stuff like that, I don't think they were told about the cancer until right before Catherine announced it. I don't think they were aware. And that's part of the reason why I think the addressing of the situation wasn't done a bit better, because it's like, you're just, as a staff member, you think she's still just recovering from abdominal surgery. And so you're just sitting there and you're just going, well, we just got to ride through this storm and she'll be back by Easter. We just have to ride through the storm. And they don't know. And so they're not being as proactive, because they just think, oh, if we just make it to this point, everything will be fine. And so I think that was maybe a little bit of a mistake on Catherine and William's part, but I think they wanted to keep as much close to the chest as they could. And I don't fault them for that. I also am not totally convinced that they didn't tell the kids. Like, they probably told the kids around the time. Like, they didn't tell the kids right away. I'm sure Catherine, once they determined she did have cancer, they went back and probably did a couple of additional tests to kind of figure some things out. That's usually what they do. And then once those tests were complete and a plan was created, I think that's when they told the kids. I don't think they waited entirely until Easter break. I think they told the kids before then, because she would need chemo and the kids would see her getting, the impact of chemo in the port and these sorts of things. So he claims that they didn't know anything until Easter. Again, I think that's wrong. He basically claims that she was almost immediately getting chemo when she said she wasn't. So it's like, basically everything he's saying is kind of sort of wrong.
This is the thing, Christopher. It goes to the inherent credibility of the institution. You're not just addressing an ambient rumor. She's sick. You're addressing a very specific, pointed question. Does the Princess of Wales have cancer? She does not have cancer. 2 months later, we lied. She's got.
They didn't lie. They did not lie. They didn't know. They didn't know. They did not lie. They shared the information they had at the time. And of course, that information can change. She did go in for a procedure. They were thinking it was going to be benign. And then later tests determined that it was not. And so then that became false, what they said. Yes, it did technically become false, but it wasn't an actual lie, because they didn't know the full context and truth then. And I don't think they knew for a little bit. Like, it's just absolutely, it's like the palace didn't lie. Like, why are you saying the palace lied? They didn't lie. They didn't know.
Cancer.
Right. But this happens all the time. It's the way they do business. And I've never understood, I think that they always say that Catherine has never put a foot wrong, but the palace.
She hasn't put a foot wrong. And so again, I think they handled it as well as they can. It was just the crazy people. It was just the crazy people that did crazy things. And so what they're participating in is the crazy side of the debate. My thought was, she's going to be out for 3 months. That's sad. I wish she wasn't, but that's life. Let's move on. Like, this is not rocket science.
Constantly does it, So yes, they fuck all the time. Don't know why.
The palace is not required to tell you everything. And the thing with royals is they give up aspects and private aspects of their life forever. So yes, they are going to be maybe a little bit cagier than the Kardashians, who are willing to have birth on camera. Yeah, they're going to be a little different. They're royals. They're royals. And if you don't understand that, then I would suggest actually watching royals, which I've watched a lot of royals. Nothing that the British monarchy did was any different than I think any other royal family would have done. Especially with somebody so young. That is the unusual thing here as well. Like, I can't think of recently off the top of my head any royal who's had cancer in the way Catherine and Charles have had. Obviously, we have Queen Marguerite, who's fallen, and she's had her health issues. Now we had the heart issues, both with the King and Queen of Norway and the King's sister of Norway. They have heart issues. And so we do know that, but we don't know exactly what treatment we're getting. We do know Crown Princess Mette-Marit of Norway has chronic pulmonary fibrosis and that she is getting worse. And we see evidence of that by her using, oxygen, supplemental oxygen, and these sorts of things. And that's obviously a very public display of her illness. So they were just doing what they were told at the time. And you can't fault somebody for just doing what they were told at the time. And that was the palace here. They didn't lie. But other people were. Other people were 100% lying and making things up about Catherine. Christopher Bosie, especially when that video came out of Catherine in Windsor, like, he was having so many videos and live streams about it. It was insane. And that was just the crazy aspect.
It was the I'm sorry, but remember that the other precipitating event was that badly photoshopped, was it a Mother's Day photo? And it looked like Catherine had like 2 arms.
So I still think the Mother's Day photo thing was just absolutely ridiculous. It was so over the top. It was just so over the top. And yes, it was probably something they shouldn't have done. And I think it did make, and again, this is why I think that the palace staff didn't fully know, because I think if the palace staff fully knew what was going on and that she was battling the cancer in addition to recovering from the abdominal surgery, I think they would have said, okay, now we need to triple check everything. Because I think the photo would have gone through the palace's team and they would have caught some of those mistakes, hopefully, rather than just letting it go. And they would have been more, I think, aggressive in addressing things. Because I think they were just thinking, if we last till Easter, everything's going to be okay. And then they were kind of caught off guard too. And again, I don't fault Catherine and William for going, you know what, we just want to keep this to ourselves and our immediate family right now. We don't want to talk to other people about this, and that's fine. And yeah.
And then they made my supposition Catherine take the fall for it because she's the family photographer, when William should have been the one to step in front of her and take that bullet, because they were trying to conceal she was sick.
William, but Catherine did the right thing. Catherine was like, this was my fault. She was the one who liked to do the Photoshop. Why this other aspect? I just don't understand why William needed to take the fall for that. That's just really weird.
Right. Well, at that point, she was. No, that was after she had made that famous March 22nd video. So we all knew.
Okay.
Yeah. So that happened.
No, that was wrong. They apologized for the photo, and then they had the cancer video later. So he's, again, wrong. The guy who supposedly wrote the book on Catherine is wrong about some of the most basic updates.
Afterwards, it was to reassure people that she had was going through chemo and was fine.
What? I'm so confused. Does he follow the royals? I just don't get the sense he does.
But yeah, so she did. I never understood the uproar. She was tweaking the photograph. So what? But it became a thing. Yes.
Because people are crazy, and they're participating in adding more of the crazy.
Become a thing.
It didn't alter the reality of the fact that she was there with her children posing in a very sweet picture, to reassure people. I think the thing about her is, she's caught up, and you have to give her credit for being as.
So it's kind of sad too, because that means we don't get as many Catherine pictures anymore, which I find very sad. I find that very sad.
We use the word cunning and shrewd, but she has those.
She's cunning and shrewd. Those are not at all complimentary words. And she wasn't trying to be, if you're recovering from surgery and undergoing chemo, you're not thinking of being cunning and shrewd. You're just trying to get through the day. And that's, yeah.
Qualities there, she wouldn't be where she is today. She has the ability to kind of navigate those treacherous waters of the monarchy. And believe me, that they're throwing obstacles in her path all the time that she has to.
Yeah, you almost get the sense that he doesn't even really like her that much. It's just, this is just really such a bizarre move
To deal with.
So that is the interview. And I just thought it was important to go through because it's important to kind of address falsehoods and facts with facts and look at information objectively. And that is important to discuss. You can't just ignore it and just go, oh, it's crazy. Sometimes you have to look because it's getting traction. You have to address it and these sorts of things. And just because somebody, again, is a #1 best-selling author doesn't mean what they're telling you is the truth. And this can go for a lot of different things. A lot of our news has gone downhill. And I think that's kind of the sad aspect of kind of royal commentating as well. Again, I'm far from perfect, but there's a lot of BS out there. People who are claiming to have sources who don't have sources and are sharing things on multiple levels. And it just confuses people. I get comments a lot where I'm like, oh gosh, guys, that's just not true. I don't know who told you that, who keeps perpetuating that, but X is just not true. And there's just so much of that anymore. People don't have good discernment. People are looking for that sort of clickable headline in these sorts of things. And yes, of course, part of being a journalist in some ways is making sure that you have something that, people want to click on. But that doesn't mean you embellish the story. That means you're looking at the facts and you see a good angle to go with. And I just think this book is bad from what I've seen so far. I will read it and see, but I also don't want to get into the, let's say, oh, he's a Sussex squatty or something, because I feel like people like to go down that path. I just find that to be a little, how should I put it? A little juvenile in a way, because people want to pit journalists and go, oh, they're anti-Sussex or pro-Sussex or whatever. And I just don't think that's particularly helpful. But I just do think there's a lot of misinformation there and it's being perpetuated and it's not good and it's not helpful and it's not being a journalist and these sorts of things. So those are my thoughts there. So guys, I just thought that would be good to go over here. And we can move on now to, let's do some of the super chats here real quick. Got Elizabeth who became a YouTube member. Why, thank you so much, Elizabeth. We also have Carol who said and they gave a super chat. Thank you so much, Carol. Like all information, we need to evaluate the source and it is logical and fits into the context of the situation. This is an important topic to review. It is. It's important to address issues of misinformation. I don't think you should just ignore them sometimes and go, oh, it's false. Let's just say that and move on. Explain why it's false, why it doesn't make sense. And, even you feel like he's double speaking because he's like, oh, they were treating her for something benign, but they needed cancer doctors from the Vatican. It's like, so which is it? It just doesn't make any sense. So treat everything logically, double check, but a lot of this just doesn't hit the smell test. Teresa Hold'em gifted 1 Royal News Network membership. Thank you so much, Teresa. And we also had Teresa who gave a super chat, 20-pound super chat, saying, I hope Princess Catherine will sue the bottoms off. All they say is false. He's making this up, in my opinion. Maybe he's the new Omid Scobie. Maureen has shown here that she's very insensitive and gives off mean girl vibes. In my opinion, it was disgusting. So I don't think Catherine won't sue. Just won't really benefit her to sue. There's no real reason to sue. I think kind of people picking apart his book is going to be enough. And that's why, I did it. I just wanted to share what was true, what was false in regards to what I saw. But it is concerning that this is becoming a growing trend. And when you have a track record like Christopher Anderson does, and he's published a lot of things, again, sometimes you get more of the gloves off approach from the editors. And I think that's a little bit of what he benefited from here as a gloves off approach. which was the wrong approach because it was just like you're getting basic facts wrong. Even in that interview, Maggie Becker, thank you so much for the super chat. Said, "Hi, Brittany. I've never trusted Christopher Anderson. He never seems to have legitimate receipts that back up his information. I knew I could count on you to see through his storytelling. You are so welcome." And yeah, I didn't know too much about him, but like I was hearing people obviously talk about it. And the Italian doctor thing, that was just weird to me. I'm like, okie dokie. Like, if you want to die on that hill, go ahead. But there's just so much, again, misinformation out there. And you have this thing where people are wanting to have a hook. And let's say they don't really have a hook. You know what? Sometimes that's fine. Sometimes you didn't find out something groundbreaking. That's fine. That's totally fine. And sometimes it's better that rather than making something up to get that hook or going with bad information to get that hook. Because at the end of the day, it undermines your credibility overall. Oh, and Lizzie B, thank you for gifting one Royal News Network membership. Oh, and Mystica Rose gifted 10 Royal News Network memberships. Why, thank you so much, Mystica Rose. I'm sure so many people will really, really appreciate that. And Her Majesty the Queen said, disappointed in Maureen. Thank you so much for the super chat as well. She's all about the words matter, do your own research and truth, but said, well, should have lied about the Mother's Day picture. That's very true. That's very true. Yeah, because I don't think, because Catherine did the right thing. She didn't let her staff take it. She's like, you know what? I attempted to do that. I attempted to do it. And you know what? If I didn't do it well. And you know, we all do that. We all make mistakes sometimes. Like I would have Catherine and William could have just had thrown their staff under the bus. And they didn't. And that's admirable, I think. That's 100% admirable. All right. So, next big thing that we do have here is Prince Harry once again being urged. So, moving on a little bit from that. And one other quick story I noticed about Maureen, and this was in a totally different interview. And it's just something to keep in mind because I just thought I was like, you're really trying to push this. And the expert keeps telling you, no, that's not correct. So this was an interview with a lawyer in regards to the Timothy's, I can't remember his last name, but he is an actor / I think director and was charged with, let's say, being inappropriate with children. And I think the warrant was issued on a Friday and he didn't turn himself in until a Monday or Tuesday. And Maureen kept pushing this idea that he was about to go on the run. And she kept pushing, he was going to go on the run. He was preparing to go on the run. She kept pushing it with this lawyer. And the lawyer is like, well, to be honest, what sort of happens is that, you kind of need to get your affairs in order and these sorts of things. And so he kept pushing back on her and she kept pushing this narrative. And, once he gave her that information and be like, oh, my response would be, oh, okay, that makes sense. All right. So that's what people do in that situation is they try to get all their legal ducks in a row for family and these sorts of things. And then they turn themselves in with their lawyer so that they could get the expedited process so that they can do the negotiation. It's that makes sense. And so I didn't understand why she was so dedicated to this idea that he must have been about to run for the cops. And doesn't sound like something this particular actor guy would do. And so I just think that's important to keep in mind. So anyways, that's my thought there, but we can move on now to Prince Harry and African parks getting hit yet. Again, he's being urged to resign from the African charity accused of RAPE, which for some reason you can't say on YouTube and it gets you in trouble, and torture. This is the indigenous rights group outrage by Harry's support for the organization whose rangers abuse the Baka people in Congo. So this has been a story that's been around now for quite a bit. And so it's in regards to the rangers who are there to help protect the camps. And they have been accused of doing terrible things to the local indigenous people. And this story first came out in 2025. And or maybe even 2024, but it's continued and it hasn't really gone away. This story hasn't gone away. And the struggle with this story, and I did a whole video on this because I just did think again that this was incredibly important. But when it comes to, let's say, sorry, I'm thinking the word here. When it comes to certain parts of Africa, they're just difficult to access. So people were kept wondering, why wasn't there like a huge outrage to this story? Well, it's just hard for independent journalists to go down and verify that story because it's just really, really hard to get to certain sections of Africa. But that this keeps going and that it just hasn't really gotten any better. I just can't help but think like Harry needs to do something. And apparently all Harry's team done is refocus the media back towards his statement in like 2025. And that's just not enough. Like, this is obviously a story that continues and it's just not going away. And so to me, it's like, okay, so you need to kind of rethink this, Team Harry, because obviously things aren't going well here. And so why has Harry not resigned? Why hasn't he done anything really? And I think it comes back to is that Harry doesn't have a plan. He doesn't have a plan. He doesn't have a job. And so to give up one other thing, I think would be a huge blow to his ego. And I just don't think he wants to do it. And this is honestly what pushed, what is his name? Oh, I'm blanking on his name. Jack Royston for the Newsweek. This is what pushed him over the edge, was this story and him and Harry not addressing it and letting it keep going by the wayside. So the charity that's been kind of looking into this, Survival International, told the Times it is outrageous to see Harry's continued support to African parks despite the horrific human rights abuses committed by its rangers against the Baka people. So this is happening in the Republic of the Congo. So it's not the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is kind of important right now because you also have sort of the Ebola outbreak to consider here. So let me, because these are, wait. Is there just Republic of the Congo or is there I thought there was both Democratic Republic of the Congo. Okay, there we go. Okay. Sorry, guys. Let me just pull up the map here. So this is a DRC, Democratic Republic of the Congo. This is the Republic of the Congo. And so they may be connected to this park up here. Obviously, there's been a big Ebola outbreak in the DRC. And so that's obviously rather concerning as well. But Harry should resign or address this or something, but he's just not doing any. There's an assessment done, but it's just the problems on the ground have not been solved and the human rights abuses have continued to occur. And so sort of the kind of issue here is the, let's say, the high level against the lower level. So you have the, let's say, the quote unquote white saviors here, who are the people who are running African parks, who are kind of ignoring the people on the ground. And which is like, it kind of, again, raises the specter of colonialism. And it's just not a good look. Not a good look. So somebody asked when were these two countries separated? I'm not sure if they were like how long ago this was. Republic of Congo. I think that's always been maybe this way. But yeah, so you can see here Ebola is kind of the big thing. Congo's Ebola outbreak is spiraling, healthcare workers, all these sorts of things. Ebola is not a good thing at all. So Harry here, I think he needs to address this. This has gone on long enough. It's obviously hasn't been fixed. They've tried to put in safeguards. None of it has worked. And so this just keeps going on. And Harry's not addressing it. And I think he just wants he just wants to continue with where he's at. He just doesn't want to lose something else. He's lost Sentabale Invictus Games obviously did briefly get stripped of its funding, or at least the Australia team did get briefly stripped of its funding that has been reinstated. But yeah, it's just not a good look. And it's kind of interesting too. Carol said, where was the WHO for the Ebola outbreak? So this is interesting in relation to Meghan Markle, because obviously with the Ebola outbreak going on in the DRC, that is where the WHO should shine, is in an Ebola outbreak, because that requires a multi-international effort. It's a very hard thing to treat because it's a hemorrhagic fever. So you end up sort of bleeding from the inside out. And there's not a ton of treatments because it's a pretty rare disease. And the only way to sort of treat it, you could say, is therapeutically. So you're basically trying to keep the fluid up, intake up, and everything, and so that the person can get past the fever. Now, there were a couple of vaccines that did get utilized during the last Ebola outbreak in Liberia. I'm blanking on the names at the moment, but those were for a different strain of the fever. So this is I think one of the rare strains of the fever. It starts with a B. So mostly in that kind of region of Africa is where those diseases are kind of the biggest and most dangerous. And you're in sweltering heat trying to treat people. You have to get all the PPE protection equipment on. So it's quite a complex thing. So that the WHO, the head of the WHO, was more excited about hanging out with Meghan Markle than he was at actually, let's say, addressing the real need at the moment, which was addressing Ebola, then, I mean, that just reflects where his head's at, which is not good. It wasn't a good look for him. Yeah. Marjorie says the WHO's record with Ebola is not exactly stellar. No. And this is the Bundibugyo. So that is a strain, because there's a couple different strains. I think there's an Ivory Coast strain. I can't remember which one the 2014 outbreak was. It's been a bit. So that is up there. And we do have an interesting little tidbit, because Princess Elizabeth of the Belgians, she did officially graduate from Harvard University with her MA in public policy. And there was an interesting article. One of my lovely followers shared it. And I just want to make sure I talked about it real quick, because at the end of the piece, there was actually a really, really interesting little tidbit there that I think reflects that abdication is probably going to be in the future for Belgium. So they don't have a tradition of it, but it is a tradition in the Netherlands and Luxembourg, which both share a really close history with Belgium. And so here we go. So this is from the interview they did with her. And so they talked about the best advice she received from King Felipe and Queen Matilda was remain humble and work hard. Has she already discussed succession with her father? She said, I am graduating this week. That is not on the agenda yet. Everything in its own time. I think he's doing a great job, and I am very satisfied with my role. I think there is a right time for everything. That moment will surely come, and he will indicate when the moment will be. So I think that last little bit tells me that they're probably going to make abdication a part of their tradition, which matches with the traditions in Luxembourg. And so there she is in Luxembourg and the Netherlands. So I think they've already discussed that there's going to be a voluntary abdication. So I think that's really interesting and exciting, because we obviously had a whole track about that during the Crown Report on Tuesday. And so we have some additional information that could be a definite possibility. So guys, that's most of what I have for today. Of course, we can, briefly look at, as ever, and the candles. I mentioned this in a video, but we'll just go ahead and reiterate it just for a little bit of, let's say, additional context and commentary. But I think the constant bundling Megan does, like, you'll have to let me know, guys. Do you have a brand that you see that constantly bundles their products like this that Meghan Markle is doing, constantly doing this sort of kind of track where they're constantly bundling things to get more things to sell? Because I find this to be very, very strange, because it's like, why do you need to bundle it? Why do we need to bundle these? But I think it's because obviously the rest of this stuff is not selling. So in order to sell it, it has to be bundled. Also, I kind of hate that how every time you move across something, the picture changes. I find that really annoying now that I'm thinking about it. But we had the cozy duo, the morning ritual. Like, she keeps wanting to turn things into rituals. And I kind of don't like that language, because it sort of reminds me of the fact that she kind of did that like whole Wiccan thing at Kerry Washington's birthday or whatever. And then, like, her sharing the stuff about astrology, like rituals, like, are we talking like witchy rituals or something? Like, that's what I think of. So I just find that to be a little bit strange. I don't think anybody's going to be, creating a ritual with Megan's stuff. I think that's very strange language, and she's keeps trying to use that, but it's just not really working. And I think she really needs to change up the language for sure, and just use something else. Use something else. Stop with the kind of witchy language of you need a ritual. You need a ritual, and bundling things without offering a discount. I think, again, guys, the reason that she's bundling is trying to move product, of course. But I think that the bigger issue of why Meghan Markle won't discount things is that, again, and this again is speculation on my part, but I feel like there's fairly good precedence to make this accurate, that all, or at least, sorry, I shouldn't say all. That's a mistake. A good portion of the money Harry and Meghan were supposed to get from Netflix ended up going in to create the As Ever inventory. So Harry and Meghan technically got their money, but it's all wrapped up in the As Ever inventory. And so because of that, Meghan Markle wants to squeeze as much money out of it as humanly possible. And so what she's doing is she's constantly trying to sell things, bundle things, these sorts of things, to try and get stuff to move at the highest price point possible. So even though it makes much more sense for a brand that's struggling like this to clear cut things and then go kind of back and then look at and go, okay, let's create a new product line or whatever. Like, she's not even creating new product lines. These are the same stinking product lines, like, again and again and again. And I don't know. I'm just kind of bored with it. I'm very bored. And I think everybody else in the world is bored too of the same stinking products. So that's my thought. And I did see, like, that was cool to share. Like, Lisa Eldridge, she did have, let's say, this special Marilyn Monroe collection that she created. And you could have gotten it bundled together. And so I'm almost a little bummed I missed the bundle. But to me, this makes sense as a bundle. So you can get each of the products individually, but you could get a bundle worth $371 and you can get it for $295. So that makes more sense if you're trying to sell stuff and if you're adding something additional. Her incessant need to keep everything retail price and not do discounts except for a couple of bundles, I think honestly at the end of the day is hurting her and her business. If she wants to create new products, if she needs to generate new products, like, clear house, clear the inventory, offer it half off. Because guess what? People who wouldn't buy your stuff at full price, they may be willing to check it out if you offer it half off. And that she's not doing that, I think, just continues and perpetuates sort of, you could say, the failure here. And so that is my thought. She should take examples from, like, Lisa Eldridge here. We also have the latest terrible imagery from As Ever. I'm like, is she wanting to light the match and then set the flower sprinkles on fire? I don't know. And she keeps going, the smallest details tend to shape a moment. Our thoughtfully curated sets featured the limited edition. Why did we capitalize the L here and not the E here? You either capitalize both or you capitalize one. Are we going with like as ever and capitalizing one? And oh my gosh. Ugh. Again, these simple grammatical errors when you should have somebody who double checks this is it's grating. Anyways, so she says, as ever, Matchbox were designed to sit alongside the rituals you come back to every day. So she keeps wanting people to ritualize her products, which I think is a really weird angle to take. You need to see my products. You need to ritualize them. They need to be part of your daily ritual. And it's like, okay, that's a little creepy. That's a little creepy. So what's the second? It's just the candle. All right, but I think she's officially out of ideas. And I don't think this brand is going to survive very much longer, to be honest. Or she's going to have to do like a flash sale at the end of the day or sell it off to like TJ Maxx or something to make some money. So, guys, that is all we have for the Crown Report today. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll do a couple questions. And we have Lizzie B here. Subscribe to RNN and please remember to hit the like button for this afternoon tea live stream. Thank you. And thank you, Lizzie B. It's been a member for 26 months. That is amazing. Carol said, Lisa Eldridge built her customer list through YouTube and got her subscribers registered to emails and started her brand. Yes. And so I used to watch Lisa Eldridge back in like 2011 when she used to do videos for Chanel and Chanel makeup. And so she's moved through and she was like the artistic director for a while for Lancome and these sorts of things. And so she's done a lot of things in addition to, as she sort of grew her profile, she slowly, and people started to follow her, she grew it into a brand. And so that's the slow effect that Meghan Markle should have adopted that she just didn't. Alma Sky says, the only ritual I have is my daily skincare routine. Yeah, it's just, I find the use of the word ritual very off-putting. I don't think I'd really like that if I was, yeah, it just feels witchy to me. And like, I could be totally wrong, but that's what I feel like. Babette says, brushing my teeth is part of a daily ritual, not lighting overly priced candles. Very true. And it's not really a ritual. You do it because it's hygienic. Well, hello, Miss Pippa. Oh my goodness. We came in with a whole bunch of sass, guys. You can help me answer some of the questions. Josie says, Tati came out with a supplemental drink mix, but Meghan does have cash to put something out like that. Or she doesn't have cash. I don't think she has the cash to put that stuff out. I don't think she has the cash to do much of anything right now. Can you see everybody, Miss Pippa? They're over there. Can you see them? Were you barking? Were you barking? Were you joining the puppy patrol? Were you joining the puppy patrol? There we go. All right. So Melanie says, isn't she a vegan or does she blow up that lie? Yeah, I don't think she is. Princess Goose says, was this recently with Tati? I'm not all up on the internet makeup drama, so I'm not totally sure. Brenda said, I think that particular interview with the author is definitely BS. I think it is. I think most of his book is. My personal opinion. I can't give you a full review until I've read it, but I do think it's weird that he's ending the first paragraph of the first chapter talking about Meghan Markle crying over Catherine, which I don't think Meghan Markle ever did, and Catherine's cancer diagnosis. I'm thinking about George, Charlotte, and Louis. No. Sharon says, will you make a video on Australia and Invictus? I mean, probably not. I can address it really quickly. I mean, they just got their funding back. And again, some overly inflate kind of the Invictus issues. And there's the overall Invictus organization and there's the individual country one. So what the overall organization is doing is not necessarily indicative of what's going on internally. So the Invictus Australia did get their funding reinstated. Given that it said reinstated, I am concluding that they're getting the exact same amount they were for the last 3 years, which is $3 million a year, $9 million overall. And that's it. I don't think there's anything really deeper than that because this is the individual country. Now, I will say still that I think it was very interesting that Australia initially decided that Invictus didn't matter that much and they got blowback enough. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll do this. But I still don't think they're that invested in Invictus as an avenue, you know? Melissa says, thank you for the truth in this video. It's an uphill battle. It is. But it's important to be truthful. It's important to look at information and try to dissect it and share where is truth, where is falsehood. Lizzie B says, hi, Miss Pippa. And so does Bobby. She says hi, and then she left. She's so sweet, though. But she came in, she's like all bound up. But I could hear them all barking. I don't know if you guys could hear. So they were obviously all just like excited about something. Josie says it's called Go-Go Juice. Leo Jackson says, hey, Brittany, I was talking to a Norwegian and asked her about if Hakan became king in 2020, would the scandals be less damaging? And she told me probably yes. I would agree. I think, again, it's sort of tricky when you're not the one who, let's say, can fully control what's going on. But at the same time, like the issues with Hakan and Metamara, obviously started years ago with Marius. And so it's not necessarily a new thing. But I am anxious, guys. So I did sort of make all my travel arrangements, got all my hotels booked and everything for next month. And I plan to be in Norway on the day of Marius's verdict. And so I'm going to go to the courthouse. I'm going to try to get a seat. I need to reach out to the district court and see what that process looks like. But I'm hoping, even though I don't know what they're saying, that, it'd be one of those things where it'd be very unique. And I'm hoping to do, let's say, a video looking at the whole case in the next week or so, because I think that'll be helpful to people too, and looking at Metamara as well. Clifford says it is not even on life support. She's limping on without life support and will finally fall and never rise again. Probably. Montana May says, cute Miss Pippa. Yeah. Shirley says, aw, your doggy is lovely. Yes, she is. So Squirrelot says, I guess we could check in with Flamingo Road Merchandise and see what Megan will do next. Aw, Mystica Rose says, oh, hello, sweet little Pippa. Ivy said, hi, Miss Pippa. Oh my gosh, guys, it's so funny though. Miss Pippa, she's obsessed with finding the frog like every night when we go potty. And last night she literally walked over him and he didn't move. He just sat there still and she totally missed him. She was desperately searching for him and could not find him. It was very funny. Lady Ritz says, did you see that Katie Nichol has been wearing the RNN necklace lately on the Royals Uncensored? Yes. So she is a partner with Ana Lucia as well, or ambassador. So she's been wearing that necklace. I have my unconditional necklace right now with the doggy paw print. And so I should be getting the silver one sometime here soon. I'm anxious to check that out. I know some people pre-ordered it. So I'm very excited. It's very pretty. Marcel Loves said, hello, Miss Pippa. Francisco said, Miss Pippa, you're adorable. She says, thank you. Melanie Mario says, I use beef tallow I make myself. I own a ranch, so it's easy. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. She ID. Desert Mermaid said, Elisa Eldridge is a great brand. I have lots of her stuff. Yeah, it's a good brand. I'm kind of bummed I missed on the Maryland set, but that's okay. Life happens sometimes. But I think I might try a thing or two. J Mansell says, did you ever see the interview with Megan when she said she would never sell $68 candles? And that's so obnoxious. I saw a clip somebody found, but yeah, me too. Zigzag said it was a Royal Marsden hospital. So there was actually 2 hospitals. Her surgery was at the London clinic, and then her cancer treatments were at Royal Marsden. So we do have 2 different hospitals. Clifford says, as she is culty, remember her trip to Paris when she walked like Jim Jones? Oh man. Bobby says, Megan crying over Catherine, and this guy calls himself a royal insider. Yeah, I can't even, Megan can't even cry on cue very well. So, I mean, she thinks she can. She thinks she can, but no. So I don't think she cried over Catherine. I don't think she cares, especially about her own niece and nephews. Are you kidding me? Stacy says, Asia, Miss Pippa. She shall be 10 this year. She's a big girl. She's getting up in there. Joang says, hit that like button, folks. Why, thank you. Shirley says, the Invictus Games will be seen as a big success. That is how the mainstream media works here in the UK. Yeah. But I just don't think a government will want to endlessly fund it. But we'll have to see. Oh, we got another super chat here from Frosty Kitty. Thank you so much, Frosty Kitty, for the super chat. That is so sweet of you, for sure. Marjorie says, you just have to wonder how much is left in their bank accounts. They must have massive loans, debt as everything fails. And Megan keeps buying expensive trinkets, and the house must cost a fortune as well. Yeah, it's not looking all that good. Princess Goose says, Hakan still let Maria's situation happen under his umbrella. Very true. So, like, I can see it both ways, because I can see where Hakan is in control and he can manage things a bit better. And he does have the benefit of being the king. But at the same time, it also happened under his house. So it's kind of hard. Desert Mermaid says, Prince William was right. He wanted the African people to run their own stuff, but Harry wanted a more colonial approach, which is stupid. Too Old to Care said, do you think King Charles had anything to do with the Australia Invictus Games reinstatement? No. Charles wouldn't interfere like that. That is a budget thing. No. Again, people like constantly overemphasize certain things and like think Charles has all this power to do this stuff with Harry. And he really doesn't, guys. He really doesn't. And nor does he want that. He doesn't want that. So no, he didn't have anything to do with that. Lauren Ferguson says, what is up with Australia changing their minds? I think they just got a lot of pressure. Lauren says, I wish Anna Lucia did rose gold. So they do have, or at least a couple of their pink gold sets were rose gold. But yeah, hopefully maybe we'll get a couple more pieces in the future. Rich says, if that's the case, then Elizabeth will be a rather young queen. Well, it depends though. Yeah, because her dad's definitely older, because her mom just turned 50 like a year or two ago, or a couple of years ago. And her dad, I want to say, maybe he's close to 60. Her dad is 66. So he's quite a bit older. Yeah, because Queen Matilda is 53 and he's 66. So he's 13 years older than she is. And so, yeah, it could be rather young, but Elizabeth is the oldest of the next generation, kind of. So Leo Jackson says, have you seen the interview with King Harold yesterday about the monarchy and its future? I saw a little bit of that, but you're right. I need to review it again for sure. Rich says the way she shoves herself and her inferior wares in front of everyone is sickening, like nagging, nag. Frost Kitty says, starting at the beginning, thank you for covering the misinformation. You are welcome. Lauren says, yesterday I heard all about the theory that Meghan was kicked out of the BRF. That's why they stuck on getting an apology. I don't think so. They weren't kicked out. They decided to leave. Angela says, in my opinion, Meghan was mad at Catherine because she dared to have cancer take attention away from her. She's that selfish. There is an element of Meghan that thinks that way for sure. Princess Goose says, Meghan is so conceited she wouldn't cry over anyone but herself. I agree. Lizzie says, 1 tier, $65 candle, go. I'd be crying over those prices too. Lauren says, my baby is 10 now, starting to have health problems. Yeah, Miss Prippa's definitely had some more health problems over the years for sure. Rich says, what cracks me up is when she has a message that says something like, our founder's favorite. She copied that for sure. She's not a founder. She is nothing. Very true. Very true. Catherine said, I like Maureen usually, but when I watched this, I thought it was so ghoulish, distasteful, and intrusive. They should take a leaf out of Catherine's book on how to be dignified. Yeah, and there's things, again, you can maybe speculate a little bit on, but some of this was just like, how many surgeons were in the room? Who cares? Why does that impact you at all? And why do you need that? Lauren said, our founder always sounds cultish. It does. Rich says, our founder's birthday, our founder's recipe, our founder's solutions. Candy Guinness says, I can't believe Maureen did this. Totally disgraceful and disgusting. In my opinion, this guy is laughing whilst they're talking about a woman and a mother and a wife and a daughter having cancer. Just outrageous. Shirley says, in my honest opinion, no one should be talking about or speculating Catherine's cancer, not even on here. So again, there is some things that you can, again, have a little bit of thought on, but like asking, and demanding basically, well, we need to know what cancer she has. Oh, we need to know how many surgeons were in the room. Like, that's just unnecessary. Diana Hustle says, please stop saying and stuff like that and these sorts of things. Does not sound complete or knowledgeable. Oh, I'll attempt. But sometimes I'm not definitive because I'm not always correct. And sometimes it's just good to, I think, leave some things open-ended so new information can come up. That's sort of how I roll. Desert Mermaid, thank you so much for the super chat. Said, Harry has made a mistake wanting outsiders to manage African parks. Prince Harry has the right idea. They need to manage their affairs themselves without outsiders. So, I mean, part of the problem there is that there are insiders managing things. So there are basically, I mean, because you have to think in certain areas of Africa, it remains quite tribal. There's a lot of tribal strife between various groups. And so if they hire, let's say, security from one tribe, that means that that one tribe can enact what they want on the other tribe. And so there is a lot of tribalism there. So you are actually talking about, I think, more of an internal issue within the dynamics of Africa generally. However, I think part of the problem there too is that they're just because it's so, I think, it's kind of colonially coded. I don't think they really want to address this issue because they don't want to pay, let's say, reputable people to do it. I think that's part of the problem because that requires a lot of money. So Prince William's idea, yes, it's correct as well, but I imagine there's a reason why they're doing things the way they are. It's just not working for them. Clifford says Birmingham City Council will not fund the IG. It's basically bankrupt. Cannot even collect rubbish. Birmingham is a tip. Yeah, I think that's not going to go very well. Frost Kitty says, we watched the independent Markle creators. Now all these huge channels have taken over and it's all sources and innuendo. Yeah, and a lot of them just don't have the sources. That's the thing. They don't have the sources they claim to. And the people who are, let's say, Rob Shooter goes on Maureen Callahan and he says all these things. It's just not true. And she's just like, yeah, that's she just agrees with him because she just doesn't in part know any better. But maybe I don't know, maybe that's just how she wants to roll. I don't know. But like anytime I hear Rob Shooter, I'm like, oh no, that's just not true. I even was like, well, I would say he's more truthful about and reliable for celebrity stuff. But even that, I'm not entirely sure about, to be honest. Neil Jackson says, is Elizabeth going alone on her ocean trip? Well, she's kind of denied that, so I'm not sure if she's doing that. Lizzie B says they left because they wanted to make lots of money. Lauren says, just remember when you're frustrated about the diabolical duo, most people pay zero attention to them and don't know who Meghan Markle is. I mean, that's somewhat true. Yes. But, that's the world I live in is this world. So it is what it is. And a lot of people don't like, politics and don't care about politics, but love this stuff. So there's people on every level. Rich says the sloppy founder. Too old to care because Meghan Markle claims her most sold candle is her birthday. Yeah, I think that's funny. Princess Goose says she loves calling herself a founder. She's not that important. No. Josie Blueya says, I wonder how long until she liquidates. Yeah, because she's going to have to liquidate at some point. Because you just can't keep that stuff forever. And better to do it now and maybe like do incremental than have to like do like a warehouse purge or something. Because like their money from Netflix is in as ever. Like a lot of it. Catherine Ford. Brittany, could you please write a biography on Catherine the Princess of Wales and show how it's done? Maybe at some point. We're definitely not there yet, but that's a possibility at some point. But yeah, there's other people though. I don't have the sources though, so that's kind of hard. Faye McCandless says, "Have you heard where the York sisters are going to lose their royal homes?" I don't know, but I mean, they're like Zara and Mike have a Grace and Favor place at Buckingham Palace now. If the girls want to keep their places at the various palaces, like I don't have an issue with that. They are members of the royal family. I think just forcing them out is just not a good way to go. Mary says, I usually enjoy Maureen, but that post and so-called Arthur are an insult to Catherine, not Kate. Yeah, I will say, though, when it comes to the Catherine versus Kate battle, I mean, to be honest, most people will always use Kate, even in the media. It's becoming a bit more common to use Catherine, but still a lot of people use Kate because that's how most lay people know her. So if you are not somebody who obsessively follows the royals, I would say a lot of my followers are, and these sorts of things. Most people, if you said Catherine, the Princess of Wales, it would take them a moment to figure out who you're talking about. If you said Kate Middleton, they would know exactly who you're talking about. And that's just a reality. I don't think Catherine is somebody who's going to live or die based on I don't think sorry, I should say, I don't think her name is a hill she is like really looking to die on. She knows people call her Kate, and she's okay with that. And I think it's healthy for her to be relatively okay with that. People online are more interested in that fight, but I don't think it's a fight that the palace has kind of given up on that fight. They attempted to fight that back in 2011 and it never took. And it still has never taken. And so like it's changing somewhat, but people have to think about headline counts and these sorts of things. And some of the mainstream British publications, like high level, like the Times, use the appropriate titles and everything, but most of them don't. And so that's just going to be how things are. Unfortunately, I don't think a battle really to get into too much. Clifford says they were busy talking to streaming companies while they were working members of the BRF. Then the Freedom Flight took off to Montecito, told Oprah Winfrey that friends told them to do grifting. Yeah. So Candy Guinness says, no, you shouldn't not know what cancer, none of the business. Found this so appalling. Yes. Shirley says, I called this out earlier and got hated on someone in the chat. Her cancer is no one's business. Brittany, in my honest opinion, you should not have promoted the earlier who has a book to sell. Guys, just because you're talking about somebody doesn't mean you're promoting them. That's like an antiquated notion of all press is good press. What I was doing is taking the information that he was giving and saying how it was wrong. You don't help misinformation by sitting back there and doing nothing. That doesn't help because there's a lot of ignorant people out there. And the best thing to do is to address it and actually explain why it's wrong. Don't just let it sit out there and just go, oh, he's wrong, and just ignore him. That's just not great. You need to explain why to ignore somebody sometimes. Rich says vegan roast chicken. She doesn't know. Daryl Ike says so much rubbish clickbait at the moment. Very true. Babette says Rob Shooter is new to this and I don't buy what he says, or at least don't trust his sources. Me either. Leo Jackson says I wrote a fanfic that Carl Philip became king of Finland. That's funny. I like that. Francisco says I liked politics before it got so divisive. Clifford says this colonial narrative painting that colonialism is bad is wrong. Tribes exist across the continent. It has nothing to do with colonialism. Prince William was right to get people on the ground involved. Again, people are on the ground are involved. That's not the issue actually with African parks. It's just that it's the wrong people and they can't seemingly find the right people. And so, yeah. Lizzie B says those jams are about to expire soon. They are actually. Marjorie says their money is now in. Novelty says Kinsey Schofield brought a frolic on her show for repeating a story that wasn't true and told her she needs to do a better job checking her resources. Yeah, Gretchen says Robert Jobson did good biography on Princess Catherine a few years ago. Yes, I do have that, and I need to read that as well because I think that'll be much better than this one. Princess Goose says, do the royals live in that palace's pay rent? Yes, they do. Usually probably a peppercorn rent. Yeah, Candy Guinness says this is nothing than salacious propaganda, gossip disguised as journalism, and sell his stupid book. Maureen kept calling her Kate. It's disrespectful. It's really not. That's how most people know her, guys. That's really how most people know her. I don't think fighting about it and getting all huffy about it. I usually actually in community notes actually say the whole Kate, when people complain about the Kate Middleton thing, I actually say the note's not helpful because it's not to most lay people. And most journalists are trying to reach lay people, not those highly involved in the discussions and in the following of royals. Leo Jackson says, hey, Brittany, you're a royalist. Do you live in the States? Yes, I live in the States. Yeah. Marjorie says some hacks have realized there's a lot of money in clicks in royal journalism, but don't want to put in the effort to actually do the research their subjects. It's clickbait. Very true. Ivy of House Spark says, will she be Queen Kate Middleton? It's getting ridiculous at this point. Probably. Probably. People will still always call her Kate Middleton. That's how most people know her and refer to her as still. If I get asked about how Royal is doing, they say, "How's Kate doing?" They don't say, "How's Catherine, the Princess of Wales, or the Princess of Wales is doing." To a lot of people, the Princess of Wales is still Diana. So sometimes it's good to get out and see the broader picture, and most people would not care about the name debate at all, and they would just probably still refer to her as Kate, to be honest, like lay people who don't follow royals. Clifford says Andrew Lowney is on a mission to destroy Prince Andrew and his family, including the entire BRF. He's gloating about it, now demanding Fergie should go to prison. His hatred is so obvious now. I will have to say, I think a couple of the stories he shared don't make any sense to me. I don't think for any stretch of the imagination P. Diddy had any interest at all ever in Fergie as a romantic partner. Josie Blue, says, talking about Kinsey, her friend, the butler, got into trouble posting the AI pic. Yeah, that was kind of dumb on his part. I looked at that picture going, that's probably AI. And he almost kind of like the way he wrote it, you could interpret it as he took that picture or he's claiming to have taken that picture, which he didn't, but you could read it that way. And in his initial post, Bobby Australia says, I get picky with the titles rather than Kate versus Catherine. Us Weekly referred to her late queen as Her Royal Highness. Yes, you read that right. That is definitely wrong. That's an easy one to get wrong because it should be Her Majesty, not Her Royal Highness. Shirley says, Brittany, no, you do not promote a scaly who's speculating on Catherine. You shut them down, hence you ignore. That's not how this works. Ignoring doesn't actually help. It just lets the lies spread. Sometimes you have to address things in order, because like that was what the palace tried to do about Catherine's cancer, is they tried to, or all the hashtag where is Kate, they tried to ignore it and it just got worse. You have to address things sometimes. Don't just let things sit there. Daryl Key says, remember how it was always Princess Di? There are people in the North who still call her Diane and they love her. Richie Tam says, hopefully when Catherine becomes queen, Queen Kate doesn't have a nice ring to it, but Queen Catherine does. Yeah, and when she becomes queen, that might be a little bit more of a possibility. Lizzie B says, me too. Maybe Prince Brittany could do a tiara tour. I want to see the crown of Princess Blanche. I think it's in Germany or Austria. Love to see. Alma Sky says, one of the most important things for a person is their name. You have to be respectful for those who care of being called by their name correctly, for those who don't do good for you. So Catherine has been referred to as Kate by William in their engagement interview. He referred to her as Kate. I think she was called Kate. And they attempted to, I actually had a friend who, as her name is Caitlin, but as a kid, she went by Katie. And she attempted to go by Kate, and it never really worked. It just doesn't really work. Sometimes how you kind of become known is how you become known. And I think she did go by her nickname, and it did kind of become Weighty Katie, which was not, and she's never really been called Katie. It's always been Kate. And I think that's how she was actually referred to as. And they wanted to change it, I think, to Catherine to make it sound more regal and official and these sorts of things. And guys, it just never took. It never took. And she's been referred to as both, and it's not a hill to die on. It's just really not. Because if you think every event, why won't people call me Catherine? They still call me Kate. You could build resentment. I think Catherine's just let it go. Whatever people call her, that's fine. And I think that's the good way to take it, because otherwise I think you would drive yourself crazy, and that's just not helpful when you have to engage with the public like she does. Tam says, Brittany, were you able to get out of federal jury duty? I was. They rescheduled me potentially to October, which I can't do because I'll be in Slovenia. So I don't know if I'll ever get to do it, which makes me look a little like, it makes me in some ways a little sad, because I would have so have covered that for something, because that would have been entertaining. Although I would have been really annoyed because you can't take your cell phone inside with you. And it's like, what would I do I could read. And of course that's what I would do, but like I couldn't listen to music. Like, how long do you have to sit there? Would I be there for 8 to 12 hours with out a phone to do anything? I have a little bit of ADD. I need something to do. Shirley T. Keela says, I like your stuff, Brittany, but wrong call on your part tonight. Well, everybody has their opinions. And that's the thing. Everybody has their opinions. So I cover what I want to cover. because I like covering what I want to cover. So I cover what I cover. And that's it. Marjorie says Queen Elizabeth wants her to be known as Catherine, as it was considered more regal. But I read Prince William and family apparently still call her Kate in private. I think they probably do. And I understood, yeah, it made sense at the time. And they tried, guys, at the beginning of the marriage, and it just never took. Just never took. And maybe she's gotten older too. She just wants to be more known by Catherine, kind of like my friend did, but it just didn't really ever take off in the media. Lizzie B says, but the media stopped calling Queen Camilla Parker Bowles. But yes, I see your point. Yeah, and Queen Camilla is just easier. The problem with Catherine too is her title is going to change again. And so that makes it a little bit more complicated. Because she's been Kate Middleton, Catherine Middleton, Princess of Wales, Catherine the Princess of Wales, Catherine the Duchess of Cambridge, Duchess Kate or whatever. And I still use Kate sometimes in titles because sometimes I have a character restriction of 100 characters, and that I try to squeeze every little bit I can out of those characters. So the Marty J says, you look great in cool tone colors, by the way. Why, thank you. I thank you. Rich says, Lady Dumbarton still thinks she will be queen. Come on. Candy McGinnis says, plus Maureen brings up the lie about the affair rumors, bringing all this crap up. Just so disgusting. Princess of Wales is finally doing well, so they're trying to knock her down. I mean, they're just looking for gossip. They're not really, let's say, trying to knock her down necessarily. So we'll try to wrap up here in a minute. Kate Fox says, I always rate those community notes helpful, to be honest. I always rate them unhelpful. That's how I do it, because it's not really all that helpful. They're not going to stop doing it, the media outlets. Lauren says, how did Meghan ever think she'd be queen? She couldn't have actually thought that. She's not that stupid. She's not that bright. She's not as bright as she thinks she is. Clifford says, lay people do not call her Kate Middleton. It's the media. I'm speaking from speaking people on Tea Shop in Yorkshire. They call her the Princess of Wales or Catherine. I honestly doubt they do. And I know at least in the States, they definitely do not. So Josie Bluia says, Diana would correct reporters. She didn't like Shy Di or Lady Di. It took years for the press to call her Princess Diana. Yeah, it's just going to take a while. Marjorie says, I'm going to see Queen Elizabeth fashion exhibition at Buckingham Palace next week. Really looking forward to it. Has anyone else been? That is awesome. I have tickets for September. Hot Mess Express says, in the U.S., people still call her Kate commonly. They really do. S. Parr says, no, we still say Camilla Parker Bowles. I know Queen Mum was Elizabeth Bowes Leon. People still say Lady Di and it's Meghan Markle. I don't think Catherine cares. I don't think Catherine cares. Shirley T says, Catherine is private, called Kate. I don't think, again, it's probably a hill to die on. Princess Goose says, I'm tired of the affair rumors. And I don't believe he has, I think it'll be a fairly close family friend. No, I don't think it is any of that. So Squirrel says, go Brittany, you do you. That's what I try to do. I do me. I'm pretty good at doing me. Grammy Bug says, you can't make everyone happy. Brittany, you're doing a great job. Keep up the good work. Why, thank you. I thank you. Yes, that's just the nature of this job. Not everybody's going to be happy with you. Babette says, you will be called up again at some point. It's just being picked for jury duty. That doesn't mean they will pick you for the jury. Yeah. And it would be interesting, but yeah. They'll call me again. I'll go, yep, I'm traveling again. So sorry. Can't miss it. Hot Mess Express says, the affair rumors are insane. They have zero validity. Yeah, it's I don't understand them at all. Novelty says Harry spokespersons today claim it was old news and they're not going to comment. Yeah. Lauren says, yeah, Grammy Bug, you can't please people all the time. You just can't. You can try, but you would drive yourself crazy trying to make everybody happy. Princess Goose says, but William isn't known as Billy, but I guess he wasn't known by those names ever. Henry was always known as Harry. Yeah. Like, honestly, if I was a member of Harry's team and he would need to do like a rebrand, I would say go by Henry. Try to go by Henry. Because that is his actual legal name. Judy Medrano says, fair rumors are always, to me, are angry responses. Too Old to Care says, I think when she becomes king, it'll definitely be Queen Catherine. I think it'll be easier to move to Catherine, but people will still use Kate. Louise Anderson says, hey, Brittany, did you see that Crown Prince Haakon and Prince Sir Magnus played football today? Have a few thoughts on it, but would love to hear your thoughts first. So I haven't been able to see that, but it is sad what Metamart is going through, but I'm glad they were able to do that. And they're definitely pulling up Sir Magnus more, which I think is interesting. Mystica Rose says, my family still calls me Misty, but I prefer others call me Mystica because Misty sounds juvenile. I'm 65. Oh, I can understand. But Mystica, that's cool. I didn't realize that was your actual name. That's awesome. Bobby says Megan was caught saying out loud she was one plane crash away from the throne. She's vindictive. Yeah, and she's thinking, yeah, maybe someday. Clifford says, please click on the like button. Alma says, I like the variety of royals you cover. Why, thank you. Grimmy Buck says, Henry could always go as my husband because that's all Megan ever calls him. Very true. Lynn Gideon says, I was able to keep my phone when I was called for federal jury duty. Thank goodness as I listened to audiobooks. My goodness, yes, I was told no, and I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Lauren says, I've learned a lot of stuff about the other RFs from Miss Brittany. Why, thank you. Marjorie says, I loathe the jury service and have done it 4 times now. Just don't know why my name keeps coming up in the ballot. Well, you must be good. They keep asking you. This is the first time I've ever been asked. Jay Mansell says, I thought it was really difficult to get out of jury duty. I always heard that you can get in trouble if you don't go. You can. So I had to send them in like my flight information, my hotel itineraries, those sorts of things. And I had to say, like, I cover news. So it's like, I can't not cover news. And it's like, because I didn't explain all of it because I wasn't sure how much information they needed. But for the obviously trip to like Europe, it's like they're once in, I want to say a lifetime, but these state visits, they won't have another one from Japan again until the new emperor comes around, most likely. They rarely do 2. So it's like, it's either one or none. So like, I can't get, like, I could potentially, if I was just going for trooping, I could say, well, maybe I'll save the money and I'll just save trooping for a different time. But I specifically did it because I knew I needed to get that done. Sir Squirrel says, I click the like button on my laptop and my cell phone. Aw. Grammy Bug says they rejected me for jury duty. I'm too opinionated. Yeah, they maybe would have rejected me. Shirley says, why was the lady's comment deleted about jury service? Oh, I don't know. Somebody can delete their own comment. I didn't delete anything. Lauren says, my husband keeps getting summons for federal jury duty and so far hasn't been chosen. This year he's had 3 summons. My goodness. My goodness. So Lizzie B, Midland giveaway coming next week. We have Lauren. He doesn't even vote, so I don't know why they're going after him. Josie Bluia says, people always ask me if my name is Josephine. I just get tired of saying no. Josie, it's fun though. That's a pretty name. It's a pretty name. So guys, we got Lizzie B. Thank you so much for the super chat. I missed. Please write the Tiara book first, please. Yes, I do need to do that. I do want to do a lot more Tiara book research as well. But I think Edward is my first thing because I really do want to get this done. But I have a whole slew of books for that. I don't know if I'll get through them though. Because so much travel, so much going on in summertime. But guys, that is it for today's live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in wherever you're at. Have a wonderful weekend, and I shall speak to you again very soon. All right, guys.